Welcome to Automating Success Show. I'm your host, Joe Langton, and I am very excited to be interviewing Afshin Doust today with Advanced Intelligent Systems. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and kind of tell us briefly what you're all about and your main passion right now?
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Joe, for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure to be here. Look forward to a very engaging conversation with you. A little bit about me. I'm Afshin Doust. Right now, I'm the CEO of Advanced Intelligent Systems, a robotics company in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. My background was originally started with microbiology and then into various kinds of businesses. And I went into finance for a while. And I always had a passion to start a business. And I saw this pattern in my past where I keep starting various businesses and I enjoy that startup time within a business. So I started doing business consulting and I thought this is the way I can be exposed to a lot of different businesses and try to create as big an impact as I can. And then I came across a bunch of friends who wanted to start a robotic company that actually incorporated it, but they were looking for another person to come in and help on the business side. And I enjoyed the conversation and the vision so much, I said, I'm on board. So I stopped what I was doing. I joined in. And since then, it was in 2016 when I joined in. And since then, I've only been focused on technology. And I sit on a few different boards and I teach about technology, commercialization. And we're working on our own robotics company, which is really exciting day in, day out.
Awesome. So we share a few things, right as you introduced yourself. I too, love starting and scaling a business. I think it's one of the most exciting things to build and start to gain that momentum and assemble teams. So it's really interesting to hear that we share that same thought. And then the second thing that's interesting is you said you got into this company in 2016, and that's actually when I started the robotics at AOS.
Wow.
Is in 2016. So we have a couple of parallels there that are pretty amazing that I didn't really realize we had until you just introduced yourself. So
interesting.
So one of the things that I like to do before we kind of get into where we are today as professionals is I like to learn more about the person sitting in front of me right now.
Beautiful.
I think it's an important part of our stories. And so tell me a little bit about your childhood and any values that you kind of were instilled by, your parents or mentors from a young age.
Well, I love that question. I have two daughters myself, 14 and 16, and I always talk to them about my childhood and how I learned, how to learn. And I remember my father used to always tell me, Afshin, if you want something, come and talk to me, but think about it and then convince me that it should happen. So it started building a little bit of critical thinking in me. So you would question your own thoughts in order to be able to support it with evidence. And at the same time, he always taught us that what you find significant today might not be significant the next day. So you have to put things into perspective and look at the bigger picture. And he always empowered me and gave me confidence to do what I want to do. So that empowerment, having empathy, being able to question yourself and realizing that it's okay to make mistakes. We're all humans. We just got to learn from it and move on and look at the bigger picture and try to understand life from different perspectives. And so that's what I learned from my father. And I still talk to him and thank him once in a while, for having given me that critical thinking power and the value to have empathy and to look at other people's point of views, try to understand them and learn that we're all humans. So nobody's perfect.
So that was one of the most amazing beginning things, like opening statements about someone's childhood I've ever heard. Just because all the things he instilled in you as a kid, you know, to almost have that like 24-hour, now they call it 24-hour cool off period, right? But the way you said it was so much more eloquent in just realizing that, you know, what seems big right now might not seem that big of a deal tomorrow. So before we get all upset and talk about it, let's wait. You know, this is how I'm kind of taking it in. I think that is just absolutely great advice. And I can already tell how good of a show this is going to be. I mean, sometimes people question, you know, why would you do this podcast and kind of share the things, you know, you're doing. And I always try to explain to people, this podcast for me is just a way to continuously learn. You know, every day on a Friday afternoon, I'm going to talk to somebody like you, and I'm going to learn things like you just said. So I appreciate you for sharing that. That was awesome.
You're very kind and modest. Thank you for that. And about the learning comment, if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see the first line I have in my LinkedIn is, I'm still learning. And that's Michelangelo at age 87 saying that. So I'm with you on that 100%.
Yeah, I always say, and I tell my 20-year-old daughter that, you know, and I actually, my friend has a foreign exchange student in town from Italy right now. And one of the things that I had said to him was, you know, it's always funny as I look in the mirror at myself, I obviously see that I'm aging, but my mind, I feel like, is as hungry as the mind I had when I was in high school and I was trying to learn how to play football and do that the best that I could. And I think it's something that doesn't get talked about enough, or maybe it's what makes all of us unique. Is sometimes I look at some of my middle-aged friends and they're just very content. They have their job and all they're thinking about is what they're going to do when they retire. And I'm over here thinking I maybe will be starting another business when I'm 70 years old. Because to me, it's just a constant evolution, you know? So, but anyway, so what, you know, have you always been interested in robotics? So, you know, tell me kind of like, obviously we just talked about your childhood, but, you know, I think in some of my research, you weren't always into robotics. So kind of tell me where you got, like what you did and how you stair-stepped up to where you're at.
Well, I was always interested in technology, but not robotics in particular. I sat on a few different boards, technology companies, and I got exposed to technology. And through my years of experience in starting different kinds of businesses, I learned a little bit about corporate governance. And when I came across my two friends with whom we started this company, Robert and Farhang, I looked at what they were doing, and it really piqued my interest. And the technology itself is amazing, but besides the technology, why are you doing things the way you're doing them? It's more interesting for me. So you could be looking at the biggest piece of technology, but developing it for the wrong reasons. But you would be doing something for the right reasons. And that's what really piqued my interest in robotics and the technology we are developing.
Okay. So your education, you studied microbiology, legal studies, you got your MBA, PhD in entrepreneurship. So tell us about all of your studies. You know, kind of put that all into point A to where you are now. You know, what kind of caused that evolution for you?
I always studied what interested me. I didn't want to study in order to get a job from my education. So when I was studying microbiology, I actually got a job working in a lab and sampling the sewage from factories going into the Greater Vancouver Regional District sewage. And I soon realized that, you know, microbiology work isn't something that really interests me, but I love dealing with electrophoresis, with agarose gel, with DNA splicing and all that kind of stuff. So I enjoyed it, but it wasn't to get a job. So every time I started studying something new was because I truly enjoyed the subject matter. And that's why I didn't pick one subject and go all the way to the end. I kept jumping ship and studying new things.
So I think that that leads me to an interesting thought, because I feel like in the industry that I'm in, I get a lot of people that went to college. I mean, I've had people that go to college for physics, but then come and try to get a job in the landscaping industry. Yeah. And it's because they went to college, and they went to college thinking that was going to be a high paying job, but then they started that job and either hated it, like they're like, oh my gosh, I just went to school and I just don't like it, or got out of school and realized it was hard to find a job in that industry. But one of the things that I do tell people all the time is, follow your heart. Whether it's, for me, people ask like what business they should start. And I always say, start a business that you're going to be passionate about. Because if you're passionate about what you do, you don't feel like you're ever working, and it sounds like that's what's fueled you to go to school, is whatever you're passionate about. It's what you want to learn about, and then grow it. Right.
Exactly.
So we've talked about your education, what you do now, but we've all had a first job. So, what was your first job? Was it an internship, or was it truly just a job, to support you? So.
I started a landscaping company. That was my first job.
No kidding.
And,
awesome. Okay.
And it started with, just mowing lawns, right? But then it developed, and it went big. And we failed at the end. And that was wonderful, because failing, I believe, is more important than continually winning. Because it's through your failures that you learn and you recalibrate and you experience the ups and downs of life, right? And that's what builds character. So that was my first job. And I've done a lot of different things. Sometimes I talk to my friends and I say, wow, remember when we were working at a casino? Remember when we went to States and worked on a cruise ship? Or, we were working as a courier, and, a lot of different jobs when I was growing up. But what was really motivating for me was at the same time trying to start my own businesses. So I started a bunch of different businesses, and in different areas, industries. And I enjoyed those experiences a whole lot more than just working for someone.
Mm-hmm. So if you don't mind, if we could dig in a little bit. So you said you started a landscape business and it failed. Obviously, we all learned from our failure. So looking back, what was the cause of the failure?
We took more than we could chew. In that business, I learned you should focus on scaling properly. The fact that you bring in more business, if you can't really service it properly, is detriment to your business. So every part of the business has to grow equally together in order to be scalable. You can't press on one button and hope for everything to go good.
Yeah. So I want to expand on that, and then I want to see, because obviously you have a lot of business experience. So I want to see if you agree with my thought process on this. So it's one of the things that got me so interested in robotic mowing was that what I found was there's this like perpetual cycle in our industry where it's easy to get into the business because you have hardly any overhead costs. So you get in, you've got a couple of guys in a truck, or you with somebody else in the truck. And then and usually that's a truck that you drive every day anyways. So your thoughts are, how much money am I going to pay somebody to do it with me? And then things start to grow. And then you have you truly start to have labor burden. Okay. Yeah. But a lot of people that get in, you don't recognize those burdens sometimes until it's too late. And then you start to talk to a bank, and the bank solution is, well, we'll loan you money on revenue. If you have revenue, we can loan money. You show us those contracts, we'll loan you money. So then the thing is, okay, I'm going to just drive revenue because I'll be able to get the money from the bank, and then in turn I'll become profitable. And then you get more employees, and and now you have employees that have been with you for 5 or 6 years. And then those employees want health insurance because otherwise they're going to go somewhere else. And before you know it, you feel like you're just patching holes on a ship. You're just trying to stay afloat. Is that how you kind of felt? Am I right in what's happening in our country? Or?
Yeah, yes, you're right. But you have painted a much more sophisticated picture than what we experienced. Because our landscaping business just lasted less than a year, and and the reason was we focused primarily on a lot of summer jobs, and we didn't expand it into other things.
Okay.
And at one point, we started looking at getting contracts from our customers, because, for example, we had a customer and we were doing some work for them, and they wanted to add a swimming pool. So we would get that contract and we would subcontract it to others, and we'd manage the project. And so we started doing that, and then we screwed up. Very simply, we didn't have the experience, and we started getting more contracts than we could properly manage, and we screwed up on it. So at the end of the day, we realized, we're not doing a good job, and we are actually creating liabilities rather than, helping. So we shut it down, and we said, this is not the way we want to do business, and it's not going well for us. So that's what it was. It became really overwhelming. But so kind of aligns with what you explained, but yours was a little bit more sophisticated than what happened to us.
Well, I didn't realize it was only a year. So what are some of you said you started several businesses. So what are some of the other businesses that you?
I'm going to fast forward to a little bit more sophisticated businesses that I started. I was working for HSBC Finance, and I was a regional sales and relationship manager for British Columbia for HSBC Finance. I learned a thing or two about subprime and lending. Okay. So we started a mortgage brokerage firm, and the mortgage brokerage firm did really well. And so we had a lot of leads that wanted to get into real estate too. So we started a real estate company. From there, we started a trade brokerage firm out of Guangzhou, China. And then I founded a private debt fund. And right now it's being managed by a chartered accounting firm. And so these are the last 4 or 5 businesses that we started. And most of them are still operational. They're still working, and they're being managed by professionals, and I've moved on completely from them. And I'm still a stakeholder in some of them, but spending full time in our robotics company right here.
Okay. Yeah. That's very impressive, by the way. I mean, that's kind of the dream, right? To be able to start a company, scale it, either get it taken over or managed by someone else, be a shareholder, and then move on. Like, because I think it's important to know there's, and I think you and I were aligned yet again. I have my brother in one aspect who loves what we're doing at Langton Group, which is my landscaping and snow removal company. And when I want to have all these ventures and start all these things and go national in robotics, he's content. He's perfectly happy to be the VP and CFO of Langton until we decide to retire. Whereas for me, I almost find myself, I have to watch my words when I say this, but I almost become bored. Like once I figured out how to do it, and now it's at that point where it's just making money and it's doing its thing, I find myself like I need to find something else. I have to solve another problem.
Yes, I think you need to be stimulated all the time, mentally, in order to stay motivated and engaged in what you do.
Yes.
And I suffer from the same disease. So
it is a disease. Right? I mean, it's weird. It's like it's a disease, but it's also what makes me successful. Like I'm the type of person where so many people are like looking forward to the weekend. And sometimes I find myself getting anxious about the weekend because everybody else wants to just sit and relax. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do now? Like, and then I'm like sitting there being like, looking forward to just working. And then I'll find myself just coming to my office. So it's like a blessing and a curse all at the same time, I think,
I agree. I concur.
Well, I'm happy we found each other. Now I feel better. I'm not just like one person out of the woods here. So all right. So get me up to speed with advanced intelligence systems. what you're doing, how you're going to grow it. Kind of catch me up from the businesses you had to the current one you're at now. So.
Sure. So Advanced Intelligence Systems started by wanting to create a robot for nurseries and greenhouses to move and space plant pots. Now, when we started looking at this robot, we said, well, what can we do in order to differentiate ourselves from the marketplace? And we said, well, one of the biggest concerns for new technology is how you service it. So we said, how can we eliminate the need for a service person to go out there and service these machines? And we concluded that what we needed to do was to create modules within that machine so that people could change that module themselves and send that module to us for servicing rather than us sending a service technician to them. So we said, well, this is great. Let's start making modules. And then we said, okay, well, we're going to make modules in our hardware, but also in our software. And then as we started doing this modularity, we said, this is great. We can actually standardize robotics doing this, as long as we keep creating our own modules in everything we want to do. I'll give you an example. Right now, you have a car. You want a battery for your car. You don't go look for the manufacturer of your car in order to find a battery. You walk anywhere, you say, hey, this is a car I have. It says this is the kind of battery that fits it because it's been standardized. So imagine if robotics is standardized through modularity. And the possibilities are endless if that happens. So we started working on methods and processes to standardize robotics. And through those works, we generated a series of modules, both hardware and software modules. And these hardware and software modules help decrease the cost and the time of creating a new robot significantly. So we were talking to our markets and we were saying to them, hey, this is the vision we have. So they came up with more things they wanted from us. So we started working on more products using our modules. And then when COVID hit us, we were going to deliver a bunch of robots to some customers and they closed the borders on us. And the government came to us and said, hey, you want to compete in creating something for fighting COVID? And we said, sure, let's look at what the options are. And within a few months, we were able to repurpose one of our nursery robots into a UV disinfectant robot. And the interesting thing is that this UV disinfectant robot can be used with our current customers too, and it can open new markets for us. So that was a test of our modularity to see if we can reduce the time and the cost of creating a new robot significantly. And so right now, we have filed quite a few patents in order to protect our modules library. And we are in the process of commercializing the 2 robots that we've created to date. And we have some more robots in our pipeline that we're working on. So what is the future for us? We have a big vision. But of course, every vision has to be big. That's the nature of having a vision, right? So our vision is to have a practical robot for every task. And we define practicality by having the kind of robots that are affordable, either through a robot as a service system, or we call it the MaaS system, machine as a service, that's connected, is IoT and AI enabled, so it keeps getting smarter as it works, and it's fully connected, so it can communicate back and forth. And it's upgradable through modularity, and it requires minimum infrastructure to be deployed. And it should also be easy to use and easy to service. So our vision is to have a practical robot for every task, and that is the definition of practicality that we have in mind. Now, to elaborate a little bit on this, when Microsoft started, Microsoft is a big successful company, and everybody knows about that. Mm-hmm. They started writing software, but their vision was to have a computer in every home. Uber wanted transportation for everyone everywhere, but they didn't build a single car. And Tesla wanted to educate people about sustainability, but they're a car company. So what these visions have in common is that all these successful companies are enablers of a marketplace to take life. How did they enable it? Microsoft was able to make computers user-friendly. And that's how they got one computer in every home. And they achieved that vision through their Windows. Uber wanted to bring the end users of transportation to the providers of it. So they had transportation for everyone everywhere. So our vision is along the same lines. When I tell you that we want a practical robot for every task, we don't want to go out there and produce 1 million robots. But we want to produce some robots, put it out there, be profitable, show that it's doable, and then we want to empower the robotics industry to be able to produce a practical robot for every task using the platforms, the methodologies, and the modules we've created.
So I've got to tell you something. First, I'm going to put a shout out to my podcast producer for getting this interview with us booked, because I seriously, like, as you speak, I just am so impressed, because you're basically, you brought up those companies, you brought up what you're trying to do. And it's literally, this is one of the things I'm most passionate about. It's like, there's been robotic lawnmowers out, and I'm telling you this so you can kind of see that you are so on the right track. It's absolutely insane. So, there have been robotic lawnmowers out since 1995 in Europe. They come to the United States. Nobody's heard about them. The manufacturer, Husqvarna, Ambrosia, there's all these different manufacturers, but Husqvarna in particular cannot figure out why these robots are not selling in the United States. Yeah. And the reason they were not selling is because there was nobody making it easy for the consumer. Okay. The consumers, if you have something that's automated, the consumer wants it to just be easy. Okay. Yes. Because none of these people that are asking for the automation have your type of educational background. Okay. And you're the one person that has the background to make these things, that actually is getting it, in my opinion, because what AOS does is exactly what you guys are trying to do, which is, bring the robots in to do a task other people don't want to do, and just make a platform that's easy. And then to even go a step further, this podcast and what I'm passionate about doing is to say, I don't need to sell all of it. I don't need to be the person that does it all. I just need to be the person that makes it easier for people to do it, so that the technology takes hold. So anyways, I seriously, it's like, we're going to run out of time at some point, but I feel like I could talk to you for weeks. So anyways, just so you know, we're going to continue talking. So you're, one of the things that I know you're passionate about is alleviating labor shortages. Okay. Yes. So, and it's one other thing I should tell you is my brother and I own a nursery also. So I'm very interested in your systems for potting and stuff. But what makes you so interested in doing that? I mean, what are you guys seeing to make this is something we need?
The nature of work is changing. And the expectations of workers are also changing. Without giving away my age, there was a time I remember, if you got a job and somebody asked you to lift something up that was 100 pounds heavy, you would do it. It's part of work, you're working. Physical work was a part of work. Right now, if you want to ask somebody to pick something more than a certain weight, you have to provide them with the proper tools, you have to do the training, and you have to make sure that the job description does actually require that and that they signed up for it. Right?
Yes.
So we are becoming less physical and we're becoming more intellectual in the way we want to manage our work. And so the fact is we still need to conduct a lot of physical work in the world. And because people aren't committing to doing it, this type of work is actually shrinking. Like, the work is there, but there's nobody to do it, nobody out there to do it. So we're going to get more and more of this happening with the new generations, where people don't want to do as much physical work. So the shortage of labor is something that we'll be experiencing in a very harsh way going forward in certain industries. And so that was one of the areas we looked at. And when we started AIS, we said to ourselves, there are certain things that we won't get into. We won't get into displacing a lot of labor if people are happy doing their jobs, because there's enough jobs that people don't want to do, we can automate, that we don't need to look at other things at this point in time. And we want to create jobs, not take them away. So by looking at a job nobody wants to do, you actually create a job that somebody operating the robot or repairing it or training it and changing the batteries or whatever needs to happen. So by automating, we are actually creating job and we are helping industries grow, which would enable them to hire more people. So that's the approach we took day one when we wanted to look at robotics.
I'm so happy you said that, because people typically people that don't have an open mind or say things in the moment and don't do what your dad said and wait a day to say it. They don't realize. So I get a lot of stuff. It's like I actually stopped posting things on Facebook. I watch what social media now I send robotic stuff to, because it very quickly turns into, oh, you're a jerk, you're taking away jobs, or, oh, how could you do this and this and that? But these people just don't understand that nobody wants to do the jobs that the automation we're providing is taking. And it sounds like again, another parallel, another thing that you're realizing, there's so many things out there. And this generation that's coming out of school, these younger people, I hear so often, the older generation of people that are used to just picking up 100 pounds and saying, well, you have to do it. But then we also all complain that our back hurts all the time. Right? The younger generation of kids, they grew up with technology, and they're not kids anymore. They're 20-year-olds and they're 25-year-olds. So when you offer them a job in technology, they're excited about it. They don't want dirt under their fingernails and to go home smelling like diesel fuel. They want to come into work, feel like they're in a clean environment, and then they want to go home, and they'll probably go home. If they're working on your systems, they'll come home to a robotic lawnmower in their front yard. So that's awesome. So what's some of the things? It's like, I know you said you're working on multiple modular systems or whatever, but what's the system you're most excited about or passionate about right now? I
think our modular UV disinfectant robot. Okay. And this disinfectant robot can help in a lot of different areas. It can help in reducing post-surgery and pre-surgery infections in hospitals by disinfecting surgery rooms. It can help in greenhouses and nurseries by reducing the amount of insecticides and pesticides that's used. And it can help in hospitality by creating consumer confidence and also a higher level of safety for the workers by disinfecting high-touch areas. And it's modular, and it has other functionalities that can be added to it. It already has telemetry, so it can be controlled from afar and remotely. And it also has vision modules. So down the road, we can add more functionalities to it. We might be able to use it for security or for different applications as the need might arise. So this is the one that we're really excited about right now. And there's a lot of interesting talks that we're engaged in regards to this project right now. So
just for the listening audience, like how big is a system like this, and how does it work? Like break into it a little more to kind of explain.
Of course. So imagine an autonomous robot. It's about 170, 180 centimeters high. And it maps an area. So the first time you need to map an area to tell it what to do. For example, if you want to disinfect the washroom in an airport, you map that washroom, and you can map between the workstations too. So if you want to map it so it disinfects the washroom and then goes to another washroom and disinfects that can be mapped into it. And then once it's mapped, you open the app and you say, well, this is washroom number 1, and the map is already stored in it. So it knows, okay, this is where I am. This is not washroom number 1, so I need to go disinfect it using UV light. And then I'll come out and I either wait for a manual command. So somebody would take me to another place and say, hey, this is room number 4. So I already have the map. I know where to go and how to disinfect it. Or you can say, now you're at washroom number 1, you need to go to room number 4. So you can map that area too. So you can give it a work order, go to washroom number 1, disinfect that. Once you're done, go to room number 4, disinfect that, and then wait there for me to tell you what to do. And it uses UV light for disinfection or for other means, depending on what you want to do with it. And fully autonomous, and it reports back to you. And it has a lot of different features. For example, it might feel movement around it, so it stops or avoids obstacles within a certain distance, and a bunch of other features that's built into it.
So one of the things that I wonder as you say that, you're disinfecting with UV light. So how do you guys make, is it up to the person that programs it on site to do this, or is there a way you guys have this built in? But so I think of a bathroom and I think of like the stall, right?
Yeah.
So then I instantly think, well, it's light, so there's shadowing. So
yes,
how do you get this corner lit? So how do you guys deal with it?
Yeah. So that's a very good question. And that's the difference between how we do certain things and how somebody else might do it. So what we do is the first time we want to map an area, we strategically pick places where the robot has to stop and, the light would reach maximum spaces with minimal shadow effect. So the spaces you want to focus on, for example, if you go into a washroom, under the sink isn't something you need to worry about, right? You need to worry mostly about the high touch areas. So we have these stickers that we put on all the high touch areas, and then we program the optimum route where we have the minimal shadows. And after the robot has completed its disinfection, we go check these stickers, and the stickers will measure the level of disinfection you've conducted. So we say, okay, we have conducted enough disinfection on the high touch areas that would warrant this to be effective. And that's how we manage the shadow effect.
And this is how you add jobs in technology, because there's nothing in technology that just comes out of the box and does something. I always say companies like yours, companies like mine, we're adding the human element to automation, know? And so that's perfect. I appreciate that explanation on the stickers, because now to me, I know exactly if I was someone that wanted to work with your business, I know exactly how you're going to test and confirm that your robot is actually disinfecting for my corporation, which is amazing.
And you know what? I want to talk about a little bit about jobs and robotics too, since you've brought it up twice. I actually wrote an article at Forbes. And the title of the article is robotics creating jobs or taking away jobs? So let me ask you a question to lead this conversation.
Okay.
When we started having telephones, I don't know if you remember this, we would pick up any phone and dial 0, and somebody would pick up the phone and say, operator.
Yeah.
You remember that?
So I don't personally remember, but I remember it in TV shows.
Yeah. I remember. I was a little kid and I loved it. You dial 0, and operator would pick up, and then you'd ask any question, they would help with it, right?
Okay. Yeah.
When they automated that, everybody was scared. Everybody said communications is going to be fully automated. There'll be no more jobs in communications. Since they automated that operator job, we probably have 10 times to 20 times more jobs in communications right now than we did back then. So the nature of work is changing. Look at another example. In the 1930s, United States was one of the least automated countries in the world. And in the Great Depression, the unemployment rate was around 25%. Right now, United States is almost the 7th most automated country in the world. And the unemployment rate is around 5%.
Wow.
So how could you explain that if automation is taking away jobs? It's changing the nature of jobs we do. It's not taking away jobs. It's actually creating jobs. If 50 years ago, you would have said to someone, what do you want to grow up to be? I bet my life on it. That 50 years ago, you would never hear, I want to write security patches for networks. It just didn't exist.
Yeah, it did not exist. You're absolutely right.
One of the highest paying jobs on the planet right now is writing security patches for networks.
So all of that was amazing. I'm glad you took control of this conversation. Yeah. All of those things. So I actually need to find this article. I need to figure out a way to post it somehow.
Just Google my name, Afshin Doust Forbes. I've written about 20 articles at Forbes, and they'll all pop up.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So, I guess, sorry, this is not some of the questions I was going to ask, but you just got my mind going. So how do people find your robots? Like, how do you get them to market now? How is AIS getting to market?
Right now, we are in the process of getting the robots commercialized. So up to now, what we've done is, if you look at our website, you'll see the robots being tested in different venues, in hospitality, in malls, and right now we're looking at airports, the healthcare industry. So you'll see some videos of our robots being tested. Yeah. So we've wanted to first test it to make sure it does the job. And right now we are looking at the best possible venue to commercialize it. And one of the venues to commercialize is our own circle of influence within the nursery and greenhouse environment. And then the other is healthcare and possibly other markets like hospitality and hotels. So we are looking at all options. And right now we are looking at a direct to the market route. But in order to be able to scale, we would definitely be looking for strategic partnerships for distribution and manufacturing. We do have some conversations that are ongoing right now with manufacturers and also with distributors. And we are very eager to push those forward to be ready for scaling when the time comes.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, you know, the product is kind of amazing to me. So that's why I wanted to ask the question so people could understand it. So, sure. So when do you think, I mean, was there a certain age where you truly found your passion for robotics? Or, you know, I mean, I know you said it was kind of always there a little bit, but, you know, when was like the aha, this is what I'm doing moment now, you know?
I believe it was in 2016 where I stopped doing everything else and just shifted right into this. And of course, there was a very steep learning curve. I had to engage myself. I had to study. And I remember once they asked me to go talk to a university about robotics. And I thought to myself, well, there are a bunch of postdoctorate robotic roboticists in this room. So what can I say to be insightful and also interesting for these people? So in instances like those, you try to educate yourself and try to put a twist on your knowledge and, you know, what you want to deliver to the audience. And I ended up picking an interesting subject that resonated with them. And that was comparing advanced robotics to practical robotics and how they're both equally important in the marketplace in order to develop technologies and then eventually to commercialize them. And that resonated with them pretty well. So I had the passion in 2016, that dynamic shift happened in how I looked at things. And then it was a continuous learning curve until today.
Yeah. Well, and that's how I feel. I mean, like I said, so my aha moment was different. You know, I just saw a robot at a booth at a landscape show and said, yeah, this is my destiny. Like I literally, the universe has put me right where I am right now with my entire background to bring this to market, you know.
It spoke to you.
It did totally. Yeah. I mean, I will look back on that moment, I'm sure, for the rest of my life, you know. Yeah. So, you know, one other thing I want to ask about, because, you know, you keep on talking about your influence in greenhouses and nursery. So I know we talked about the infrared robot, but explain what you're doing in nurseries. So what's the robot doing there
Okay. Well,
just because a lot, just so you know, a lot of people that listen to this podcast are in the landscaping industry, and they might be literally thinking like, Joe, what are we talking about? The one that cleans bathrooms for? Let's talk about the other one. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of nurseries and greenhouses, in fact, more than nurseries, have already been exposed to the use of UV light in order to reduce the amount of pesticides and insecticides that they use within their environment. So we're not reinventing the wheel. What we're creating is a smarter way to use UV lights in the same environment. So making it autonomous, making it mobile, making it capable of gathering data and making intelligent decisions on the amount of exposure, how you want to expose it and where. So we are looking at creating solutions for greenhouses where we can automate a lot of what they do, including the application of UV to their environments. And we have other solutions in our pipeline to automate the movement of goods along the nurseries or greenhouses with autonomous robots, autonomous vehicles that we are working on. And also, for example, taking the produce from point A to point B to be packaged or shipped, or towing a cart from point A to point B, where right now is being done with a driver and, in the outdoors using diesel tractors, and on the indoors with, different means, but automating those tasks to help them perform their work a little bit more efficient and better.
So I'm going to just put this call out right on the podcast. If you ever want to make something that does snow removal in the middle of the night and all day, you call me up. I'll give you every industry piece of knowledge I have, so I have it. Seriously.
That sounds good.
Because if you're doing this in nurseries or greenhouses, we can make something. I'm sure you can make something that pushes snow with some feedback. I say it all the time, like that is an industry that all companies like yours maybe don't think about that much, but it's the industry that's truly dying for help with labor. I mean, more than any industry you could possibly think of, just because the hours are so long, it's so cold, it's middle of the night. So we'll leave it at that.
Sure.
I'm just planting the seed. I'm gonna get a mind like yours working.
Of course.
So, who are some of the most important mentors in your life?
Well, I would say I would start by my father. And I had another mentor who was a prof actually at the university who had a huge impact. His name was Bill Main, and he was a great guy, and I learned a lot from him. And right now, there are a lot of good people around me I learn from. I wouldn't say I have one mentor that I keep going back to for advice, but I have a lot of mentors. And the way I look at it is each one of them is really great in one area. And one of them might be great in showing me my blind spots in making strategic decisions. Another might be great in creating connections for me in areas where I want to have more connections. Another one might be great for me to take my ethical dilemmas to. So I have a lot of people around me that I go to and I confide in and get their 2 cents on how to make decisions.
Yeah. Well, I can tell, you seem very well-rounded. So it doesn't surprise me that you have many people that you can go to help you. And I'm sure you're mentoring a lot of people yourself now. So, in addition to being your industry leader, I know you teach entrepreneurial studies at 2 different universities. So obviously you just named your mentors, but it's obvious to me you also want to pass on things that right? And so
yes, I'm passionate about sharing knowledge. I think knowledge grows by sharing it.
Yes,
and I'm passionate about that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people overlook. When you look at life and you look at humans in particular. It's one of the things that we can really do. Everything else that's on this earth with us has to pass it down through DNA somehow. But with us, we have the ability to pass down information. And I feel like when I'm talking to younger people, that's the thing that I think, I don't know what it is, that I think we all have that aha moment in our lives where we're like, where we really realize that. And I think sometimes when we're younger, you don't realize it as much, you know? So I'm always trying to get younger people to realize it earlier, you know, so they start paying attention, you know? So, you know, is there any advice that then you want to give to maybe some of these younger people that are listening that want to get into robotics? Any advice you can give, right, that you would want to give that that might help people?
Of course, depending on where you want to get into robotics, you know, if you want to get into R&D for robotics through a university, it's a little bit different from when you want to get into commercializing robotics. It's easy to get superly excited and get lost in R&D when you start a robotics company. So if you want to start your own robotics company, try to stay as practical as you can and try to avoid over-engineering as much as you can. And the biggest piece of advice I can have for anyone who wants to get into robotics, the simpler your solution, the more powerful it is. Don't overcomplicate anything. The most difficult way to do robotics is to look at how simple you can create it, not how complicated you can make it.
That's great advice. I love it. So, where do you see the industry headed? You know, I mean, obviously right now we're two guys that are pretty into robotics, but there's not a lot of people like us. I personally, I don't think the industry has even seen where it's going to go yet. You know, what's your thoughts? You know,
well, robotics is sexy. And I coined in a word at Urban Dictionary, and the word is robo-hype. So there is a lot of robo-hype around robotics. And what robo-hype is people thinking that there's a great idea for automation, but not knowing the challenges in automating that process. So the expectation of the public is a whole lot more than the reality of the robotics world, because they hear about all this latest research that's happening, or they see some robots flip-flopping and walking and kicking and doing a bunch of things like that. But the fact is that to take that robot, make it affordable and make it practical so it can actually do something really amazing that stands out and that can solve a problem in your daily life, that's a big challenge that the robotic industry is facing right now. So where the industry is going is trying to solve the challenge of practicality in robotics, trying to solve the challenge of creating proper application engineering in the robotics field, where you can say this robot actually mows your lawn and you don't need to worry about it. It's not going to explode on you and you don't need to spend half an hour getting it to run, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of challenges the industry will be facing. And once we overcome these challenges little by little, then you see mass automation of things that you might not think would be able to get automated today. You know, I'll give you some examples. When we look at artificial intelligence, it's usually associated with robotics, but there's artificial intelligence everywhere that has nothing to do with robotics. For example, you get into your car and a map pops up and says it's 25 minutes to get home. And over here, we have too much traffic, go from the other route, right?
Yep.
So we are used to it right now. But 20 years ago, this was out of this world. You know, you can imagine you would be able to have it. Same thing is going to happen to automation. Things will get automated slowly but surely, but you would be able to compare it to 20 years ago and it will awe you, it will wow you, but we'll get used to it as it happens to us.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I believe, but tell me if maybe you think I'm wrong in my belief, that as these certain systems come out and people figure out a way to automate, you know, mowing grass, doing, disinfecting bathrooms. Okay. And now, especially hearing what you're doing, making it modular, the cost, you know, when you're saying how expensive is it to get that robot to do a backflip or walk around, people don't realize how much it costs to get that prototype out there. But I feel like all the money's in the R&D, right? It's the research and development to get, that's where a lot of the money's tied up. Once you start to scale it out and put these things out into use, now you can start spreading that R&D out, and now it becomes more affordable and it becomes more of an affordable solution, right?
Yeah, I think all the money is in R&D. If you look at the big picture, and I agree with you, there's a huge amount of R&D. But that being said, even the components that are used in robots right now, some of them are pretty expensive, but they are becoming cheaper. Every year, the functionalities are becoming better and the price is going down significantly. So you're right. Down the road, same thing that happened to computers. Every year is, a better, faster computer at half the price. Yeah. So, same thing is going to be happening to robots down the road. And hopefully, we'll get somewhere where we can automate things that we don't want to do completely from A to Z.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting to think about the future because, that's what I tell a lot of people right now that are getting involved in automation, and they almost seem impatient, right? They're just like, oh my gosh, it's never going to take off. And I'm like, listen, if you get into it now, when it does take off, you're going to be leveraged very, very, very favorably, because you're already going to be in it. You're not going to be playing catch up, So,
I agree.
So, is there anything else that you feel like passionate about creating that you're not already doing, or is where you're at right now, the things you're creating, you feel like that's really the wave and where you want to be hyper focused on right now?
We are hyper focused on where we want to go, and we are passionate about creating other things, but then you have to create a balance between the two, right?
Yeah.
And keep your focus to be able to deliver something that you've started working on, and then shift the passion eventually into other areas. But we are working on a bunch of drive-by-wire technologies, and taking a vehicle and making it autonomous by removing the hydraulics and replacing them by electronic controllers. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that we're working on, and we always have things in our pipeline that we plan to work on once we free up some space. And we love looking at things from kind of an intellectual property perspective, saying like, can we add value here? Can we create something new? And we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to keep adding more stuff and make life easier for others. So so that's the outlook we have, what we'll be doing in the future.
So if you had to start all over again, is there anything you would, the 20-year-old self would tell you for right now, or do you feel like it's all played out exactly how it should have?
I love this question because I ask this question from everyone I meet,
Really?
I love it. Like, what would you change about your past on any front? Doesn't matter where. Yeah. And I have no regrets. And I think we are a byproduct of the journey that we've gone through. And the first thing we need to do is to start loving ourselves in order to be able to be productive parts of society and to love everybody else and to be able to help, in mass. So in order to love yourself, you have to own everything you've done to date and come to terms with it and love it and cherish it. So if I could go back, I would do the exact same things I've done to get where I am today. I wouldn't change a bit. Doesn't mean that I've been the most productive. Doesn't mean that I haven't made mistakes. I've made a ton of mistakes, and I could have done things that would have ended me somewhere else, Yeah. But where I am today is where I want to be, and I'm enjoying every second of it, every minute of it. So I wouldn't change anything.
That's awesome. Great answer. And so I do like the question also, and the reason I do, it's like, every sci-fi movie that you've ever seen with a time machine, it's like, don't alter anything or it changes your reality. And what I found was anybody who's happy, truly happy, and it goes to you saying you've got to love yourself, right? Anybody that's just truly happy with the life they've lived in to this point, why would you want to change anything? I always say to people, I had very few regrets in my life. The one regret I had was not playing college football. I was a good high school player. I'm a big guy, but I'll never know what I could do in high school. But if I go back and play college football, I don't have my daughter. and she's literally the best thing I have in my life, you know? So anyways, I love your answer. It was great. So, you know, one of the things another question I always ask, I'm a big believer in companies nowadays, you know, it's harder and harder to manage an employee, you know, so, and people don't want to be managed anymore. So, you know, I think the most successful companies moving forward are going to have, you know, these core values. And I have to say, I have a mentor of mine, his name's Gary, and he has a podcast himself, and he brought a guy on that talked about a core values committee. So I like to ask people, like, you know, if you have any, you know, particular core values, and if so, are they set up at your current company?
Yes. So the core values that are set up at our company are trust, accountability, and empowerment. And of course, transparency. Everybody needs to have transparency. So what we do is we empower our team members in order to be able to be their best. And we allow them to make mistakes, you know, and we lead by example, you know. So whether you like it or not, you always lead by example, because people look at you and they learn from it. So if you empower somebody to do something without penalizing them for their mistakes, as long as, you know, they are trying to be 100% accountable for whatever they do, at the end, you build teams who are loyal and who would go to the bats for you. And you have to acknowledge your shortcomings too, and you allow them to do the same, but you don't hold it against them. You know, we just identify how we can help each other grow. And at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we're allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I think that, you know, most people that I talk to that are very successful, they almost answer that exactly the same. I mean, you would, you know, people that listen would think we're all copying off of each other, but it's more of just, we're enlightened. You know, you kind of realize, like, this is what works best. Because, you know, I always tell people, one of the things when I realized my passion was in being an entrepreneur was to really realize that you can almost, like, one of the things when I'm running my company is I think about the worst ways I've ever been managed and just try to tell myself to never manage someone that way, you know? So, you know, I think it's great to have the values, and those are perfect. So what do you think? I mean, I already kind of know, but what are things you're doing that differentiates you from your competitors? I mean, I feel like you're going to tell me the plug and play type scenario, but I want you to put it in your words.
Yeah. I would say our modularity and trying to be a fully integrated solution to what we create. You know, we try to do everything from A to Z for the product that we put out, and we use our modularity in order to create and deliver more value to the end users. So that's our difference.
Good. And what are you? So sometimes I skip this question, but I feel like we're so much alike. I kind of want to hear if we share any of these things. So, are there any, like, books or movies that you really love or that you feel like really stick with you?
There are two movies that I truly love. One is Ratatouille. And
that's my daughter's favorite movie. That is literally, if my daughter wasn't in school right now, she would be like jumping up and down. That's my daughter's favorite movie.
Yeah, it's my favorite movie too. And I love it because it shows resilience and it shows how to break biases and stereotypes, and how there's big messages in this movie. You know, it says, hey, don't be afraid, go ahead and do it. And doesn't matter how they stereotype you, try to break that and be who you are and achieve your goals. Yeah. So that's Ratatouille. And for the books, I love a book that I recommend to everybody to read. It's a simple book about philosophy of life. And it's called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. It's a very easily readable book, very thin book, and it talks about everything from work to life to justice to children, family, love, everything. And it's got a couple of pages on every subject. And it's a reference book. It's something you can go back to and it resonates with you. It's a bestseller. It's a classic. And on the business side of things, I like Ray Dalio's Principles. It's an eye-opening book, and he says, don't be afraid of throwing things out there and see how the team will come back to you with solutions, and be transparent and allow people to live and work, but stay true to your principles, and that's what will get you through thick and thin.
Awesome. Yeah, so those are good. So hopefully people that listen will look those up. The one of the things that I tell people, I'm not a big reader, so I never have books. I like, it's one of the reasons I do podcasts. I like to hear people talk and stuff. But my favorite movie, just so you know, is actually Interstellar. And the reason I love that movie is it's because the relationship with his daughter, and so it just kind of shows that scene where have you seen Interstellar?
Yes,
the scene where he's in the black hole and he's pushing the books and it all comes back. It's like, I get the chills even talking about it. And then I love the show Cosmos, so I'm very into like science and putting things into perspective, where we are and how small a time that we're actually here and the impact we're making. So, to kind of round it out, we're kind of getting to the end here. Are there any words of wisdom or past experiences that you had that you're using that you're making your business better with, so someone else doesn't have to make those mistakes? Because you said you've learned from your mistakes as well as I have. But
of course. So if I had to talk about and this is a tough question to answer because there's a lot you can talk about, right?
Yeah.
But if I had to boil it down to a few things, I would say in every business, value the people you're working with and empower them to help you. So help them help you. And if you value those relationships, whether it's with your employees, your suppliers, your clients and purchasers, whoever it might be, people do business with people. And if they love that relationship and who you are and how you value those relationships, you won't fall. They'll carry you through.
Awesome advice. So this is always the big one. This one typically is the stumper for everybody, but what do you want your legacy to be?
Somebody who's done things right. That's all. I want love and kindness to be left behind when I leave. I don't care about anything else because it doesn't matter how big. Edison, the biggest legacy ever. Einstein, the biggest legacy ever, right? But if you still look at what's really important about Einstein, it's the letter he wrote to his daughter, right? And so once you get to know people as people rather than what they've invented, and that sticks with you. So I want everybody to know me as somebody who always tried to do the right thing.
Awesome. Well, I will certainly I will certainly say that this has been a pleasure to interview you. I actually wish we had unlimited amounts of time to continue on. Maybe we'll have to do this again. Maybe like a yearly thing or something to catch up on where we're at, because technology is always evolving. But I want to thank you very much for your time. Actually, there's one more question I'll ask while we're just on here. We always have a song, that we have. What is your song going to be, and why is it your song?
We are the world, USA for Africa.
Awesome.
Because the song was geared towards bringing everybody together.
Yeah, that's a great song. I'm glad you picked it. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck. I love that we're both trying to do similar things in the industry, and we're going to have a lot of fun in the future, I can tell.
Thank you so much, Joe, and we'll definitely be in touch.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.